Dun, dun, dun. Good afternoon, friends. This is Dennis. It is Friday, July 11th. It is 12:31 p.m. and today we are joining to stop, to breathe, and to reflect. I hope everybody's having a great Friday. I hope that your week has gone really well. Before we begin anything today, I'm going to encourage you to find a spot where you can just kind of settle down a little bit, where you can allow yourself to be slightly more still. And in doing so, you can kind of reset. You can allow yourself to just kind of stop for a second and just kind of turn over and start fresh again. And that's what we're going for. That's why we need to, or that's what we need to do, so that when we encounter the world around us, that we allow ourselves to be as still as we can be, and we can lovingly respond. We can listen. We can be open rather than be closed off, to be protective rather. Those things are just not really good, and they don't allow us to grow. And so we're going to start off this time with some box breathing. I'm going to encourage you to breathe in through your nose, breathe out through your mouth. As you're breathing through your nose, you want to receive all of that, just a sense of peace, a sense of calm. You want to receive a sense of letting go and a sense of renewal. And as you breathe out, I want you to let go of all that worry, all that anxiety, all those things that take us out of the here and now, and just kind of let that go. Just release that. Just kind of do that. And before we begin our breathing, I want you to scan from above the head of from right above your head to down below the soles of your feet, and kind of do a body scan and figure out, how do I feel right now? Am I holding tension in my head, in my eyes? Am I squinting? Do I need my glasses? Maybe, I don't know. Um, is there tension in my jaw? Is that something that I need to work on? You know, my shoulders, how do they feel right now? And just kind of loosen yourself up so that you can allow yourself to be as open as you can be in this space. And so I invite everybody to direct your attention to your breathing as we begin.
Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. 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 Finished.
All right, friends. And so I hope you can feel a noticeable difference at this point, rather than when you started. If you didn't, just go ahead and hit that pause button, rewind a little bit, and start fresh again. And just give yourself time to just kind of reset. I think that's an important thing that, we don't do. And it's something that you can easily do at any point during your day. You can just kind of say, hold on, I've got to take a phone call, or I've got to excuse myself to use the restroom. Go and breathe. Take some time to stop and just to breathe. And that's just such a crucial part to kind of self-regulating and allowing yourself to be as present as you can be whenever you're someplace. Um, what are those things that take us out of the here and now, though? What are those things that are sources of anxiety or sources of worry or maybe pain in our own lives? And you know, some of these things are things that we deal with for a lifetime. Sometimes these are maybe it's wounds or trauma. Maybe it's something within somebody that you work with. Maybe it's your family. Whatever the case may be. I was reflecting upon today's gospel and thinking about, what does it mean to kind of shake the dust from your sandals and move on? And this is something that, I've been preaching this since like day one. I think it's the most important piece of scripture, because do we try to continue to just work against something that is not open or receptive? And we have to ask ourselves that question. Am I open, or am I in this state of constant, I know what it's got to be like? Am I so arrogant and wrapped up in myself that I'm not able to hear the world around me in the way that I should be hearing the world? Um, and so I'm kind of encouraging everybody to kind of look within your life and figure out where you are, kind of modeling. I'll call it. What are your Sisyphus moments in your life? What are those things within our own life that we're just trying to push this rock? If you've never heard of Sisyphus, it's this. It's a story that's written by Albert Camus. He was a philosopher who wrote this story about a man who has to push this rock. And imagine there's just this slope that is impossible to push a rock beyond. But every day he would continue to just push and push and push. What are those resistances within our own life that we have to be aware of, and we have to kind of stop ourselves and ask ourselves about? Because it is so easy for us to become stubborn in our pursuit of irreparable good, whatever it is that, that thing. And I say irreparable good in this instance because the damage that's being done is to ourselves. We're pushing against something that just, it's not going to move. Now, does that mean you abandon the message itself? Or what do you do in that instance? How does that arise within your own life? How do you live that out? And sometimes we just have to step away. Hold on 2 seconds. Speaking of stepping away, I've got dogs that are losing their stuff. Hold on. All right, friends, move on. Ah, sorry, I had the dogs with me. And so, examining your own life, examining our own world, where are those places where I need to kind of step away from the resistances, the people that are not open to us, or it's the perhaps it's just the not being appreciated, or you're not valued where you are. And I'm not saying put yourself into a situation that's troublesome, or that's perhaps damaging to your well-being, but staying within a situation can be incredibly damaging to yourself, right? Um, where do we shake the dust? This is something that comes into a cross section very, very often with the idea of forgiveness. How do I walk away from the things that I love, the things that I think I'm supposed to do? And when you feel this calling within yourself that you're called to do something, it's very hard to walk away from that, isn't it? I mean, it's almost like I can't do that. That'll make God angry at me. Well, God has very clearly said there are times where you have to walk away. There are times where you have to leave. Jesus himself didn't even stay in the same place constantly. For that 3 years of ministry, he was constantly on the move. Why? Because oftentimes he was not well received where he was. So what does it mean to not be loved because of who they say you are? Well, I would say in today's world, more often than not, people don't like Christians because they're not like Christ, not because they are like Christ. Oftentimes, Christians in today's world are anything but Christ-like. It's like that Mahatma Gandhi phrase, I like your Christ very much. Your Christians are not very Christ-like. Within ourselves, where are those moments where we're not displaying Christianity in the way that it could be lived out? Where are those moments where we are not open in our own heart to moving on? Where are those places within our own self where I think pride and being stubborn can be louder than that openness of heart that we're all called to have? I mean, it's a worthy reflection within anybody's heart. It's one that I had to have time and time again. I remember there was this argument that used to always happen when we were in seminary. You know, if you feel that God is calling you to something, are you allowed to walk away from it? And that's the question within the mind of every person who is discerning a vocation. If I really feel called to this, am I allowed to walk away from it? That's a really tricky walk, isn't it? You know, there's the idea of what faith is, because I feel like, you know, God doesn't necessarily call the qualified, he qualifies the called, right? That's very cliche, but do I live in such a way that that I'm open to maybe I was not right about the call, or maybe that was a short-term call. Maybe that was something that where I was when I was supposed to be there. Because there's a lot of things that we try to make these monoliths within faith, these unchangeable things. But oftentimes that's probably more about practicality than it is about divinity. As we come to grow and understand the human person more, that changes dynamics, um, because it requires, with also science backing from time to time, this idea that there is no difference between any person. We come to realize that many of the judgments that are made, well, that's not what we're called to be. There was a long time within the church that the church very much denounced any other denomination. This is still very much held by in the mind within a lot of Christians. Even within Catholics, there's that heresy of Fenianism, where you think that only Catholicism is the way to heaven, which is not a true thing. That's actually a heresy. And so the confusion that surrounds oftentimes can really cloud the mind of the discerner or the discerning party. What am I supposed to do? How do I encounter these incredibly difficult things? How do I allow myself to carry out the will of God when genuinely I just can't do this anymore? You're not called to. You can change that mission. You can walk away. If there's something that is debilitating to you in some kind of way, it's okay to walk away from it. What if it's your family? What if it is your family? It's okay to walk away from it. I mean, pending you're an adult, but it's okay. Because God doesn't want us to have to suffer, or doesn't make us suffer based on our own. God doesn't call us to suffer. He called his son to suffer, if anyone. But the rest of us, we don't have to be stuck. You don't have to be abused. You don't have to be belittled or not valued. You're allowed to walk away from where you were. You're allowed to move on. And then what you realize is that following what it is that God wants from you, which is to flourish, which is to be the best version of yourself, that's actually able to be achieved at that point. Very clearly, if I have the energy and the support, I can be more than I ever thought I could be. Oftentimes, those roles of following the will of God puts you into a place where it is just you and God. Some of us are not necessarily strong enough to handle that. Or maybe it's too much solitude, just you and God, and you are called to community or something more like that. And so, what I'm kind of throwing out there is just kind of a plea of openness within any one of our hearts to not feel stuck, to not feel afraid, to not feel as though you have to endure such trials, because even Christ himself said there are times where when your peace is not received, when you're not valued, when you're not loved the way that you need to be loved, it's okay to walk away. It's okay to move on. It's okay to be in a place where you are valued, where you are supported, where you are loved. In fact, that is exactly where you should be. And so, friends, on this Friday, maybe that's a struggle that you're facing, and maybe it's not. If it is, may you have the strength within yourself to move on. And if it isn't, may you create environments that people can belong, where people can be what it is that they're striving to be, where people can be celebrated for who they are as they are. And when we do this, we transform the world around us. Peace be with all of you now and always. Y'all remember to be good to yourselves. Y'all be good to each other. Take care.